Welcome to Cricket World TV Hotspot with me, John Pennington, and Rob Johnston. Hello, Rob.
Hi, John.
And we're going to look back at the first Ashes test in Cardiff and then look ahead to the second test, which gets underway at Lord's very soon indeed. Rob, this time last week, I can't even remember what I predicted, but I certainly didn't predict an England performance as good as that and an England win. Just give us your thoughts on that rather interesting Cardiff test.
Yes, well, I think you're right in that many people would not have picked such a dominating performance for England. And in many ways it was surprising, but I guess actually historically over the summer, a performance like that wasn't perhaps so unexpected when you think of how England played against New Zealand at Lord's throughout the one-day series, and there was or has been an air of positivity around the side. So it was a great performance, a very dominating one, and perhaps more surprising was the way Australia played rather than England, because I think they were quite subdued, perhaps not as aggressive or in England's face as they may have been. So I think that was the most surprising thing rather than England's performance.
Do you think Australia were maybe a little bit surprised by how aggressive England were, the real intensity of their play at all?
I think they may have been, yes, and I think also part of that may have been the thinking after the New Zealand series that it had been played in a very good spirit. The cricket sort of did the talking, and I think maybe Australia were a little bit conscious that they didn't want to come in and seem snarling and in your face and get some negative headlines. So England really did their talking with bat and ball, and yeah, I think you're right. They were very aggressive, very positive, and I think maybe Australia was slightly surprised, and together with maybe not wanting to seem quite as snarling as maybe they have been in the past, both of those things might have contributed, I think.
Interesting. We were talking to Brett Lee a bit earlier on today, and he's sort of saying Australia need to be a bit more aggressive, not in a bad way, not in a negative way, but really get that sort of Australian way of being aggressive and pushing England onto the back foot if they can ahead of this Lord's test. What about key moments in the game that maybe turned it for you? What would you sort of pick up on?
Well, I think in the first innings, the dismissals of Stephen Smith and Michael Clarke by Moeen Ali, I think they were both batsmen were obviously set. They tried to attack Ali, and he managed to pick up both of those wickets. So I think if one of those had got a big score, obviously Australia would have got a lot closer to England. And then obviously with the bat, Brad Haddin dropped Joe Root in England's first innings, which was a big moment. But I think actually more important in that first innings for England was the way that Ben Stokes came in the middle order at 200 for 4, and really the game sort of could have gone either way there. And he took the game by the scruff of the neck, scored a very important half century very quickly, and I think both of those were key moments for England, where the game could have gone either way, but England managed to win those moments.
And that's so often what it's all about in the Ashes, winning those key moments and winning those key sessions. I felt like it was maybe a bit of a breakthrough game for Moeen Ali. A lot of people maybe a bit wary about, is he going to do the job with the ball, but he certainly did, and got some runs as well, so massive confidence booster for him. Let's start looking ahead to Lord's then. I mean, I wouldn't expect the pitch at Lord's to be as slow as Cardiff, but maybe it's not going to be as quick as Australia might like as well. Have you got any sort of insight into that?
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, I did hear a lot last week of England doctoring the Cardiff pitch for a slow wicket, and I think a lot of the people who have played there before will tell you that Cardiff is just generally a slow pitch. So it's not, it wasn't a preordained thing by England to make the pitch slow. So I think there will be more pace at Lord's, so traditionally a bit of a quicker wicket. As I mentioned in my preview piece, I think the pitch in the New Zealand test was an excellent cricket wicket. It had some pace and bounce for the bowlers, but also meant that the batsmen could play their shots. So I think it will be quicker, but I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of grass on it for Australia's seam bowlers and Mitchell Johnson in particular to be happy about. But we'll just have to see when we get to the toss tomorrow morning.
And of course, both of these two sides go into it with very different preparations. That happens often. One team wins, one team loses. England's unchanged squad looking pretty settled. News that Mo and Ali is fit and ready to play, whereas Australia looks like they're going to. Well, we know that Brad Haddy won't play. Peter Neville's going to come in and make his debut. It looks like Shane Watson's going to miss out as well. So very different sort of build-ups for the two teams.
Yes, definitely. And what you're starting perhaps to see is just a little bit of the unravelling of the Australian side that beat England so comprehensively in Australia in the last series. And it's funny how that process can be accelerated after quite a heavy defeat in the first test. So it's not ideal from Australia. They obviously would have based their plans for this series around having Watson at 6 and Haddin at 7. And you know, I don't think there are. I think there are some other issues that they might have to address. David Warner's not in particularly good form. Adam Voges scored 100 in the Test match in the Caribbean, but since that hasn't really done anything. So I think there are a lot of issues for Australia to worry about, and it's obviously not a great position for them to be in. But it's saying that, I mean, the players that are coming in, Mitchell Marsh has scored 200s on the tour already, and Peter Neville is a good run maker for New South Wales in Australia domestic cricket. So they're good cricketers, and I'm sure they won't be overawed by tomorrow's game.
And do you anticipate any changes for England? They'd love to go in unchanged, but do you think how likely is that?
I think that's very unlikely. I think as long as Ali pulls up okay in the morning after a slight side niggle that he's got, I think England will pick the same 11. Whether that continues throughout the series, we'll have to see, because I know Stephen Finn is bowling very well. Whether they might look to freshen their bowling attack up later in the series, but I think for the moment they'll keep the same team and look for the same sort of performance.
I think they will, and this time, well, just before the Cardiff Test, Rob, you went for sort of Ben Stokes as a player to watch throughout the series. He had a pretty good time of things in Cardiff, and maybe just pick a player or two from either side to watch out for in this game.
Well, I think for England, Mark Wood is turning into a real good bowler for them. You know, he picked up some important wickets in the first Test match. He's bowling at good pace. He's giving Alistair Cook a lot of control. So I think he's a key bowler, because far too often for England, particularly in the West Indies, you'd have Anderson and Broad in spells bowling quite well, but then the backup for them wasn't quite there. So England need Mark Wood to continue his good form. So I think he'll be a key player at Lord's, especially if it might swing around a bit there. For Australia, I mean, we said Stephen Smith before the Cardiff game, and again, I think that's important. But I'm going to go with David Warner this week, because I think he sort of summed up Australia's subdued attitude in that first Test match. He wasn't his usual self with the bat. He didn't come out all guns blazing as you know he usually would. So I think if he gets back that attitude and that endeavour with the bat, then you know, that will put some pressure on England early on, and hopefully, from Australia's point of view, get them off to a good start.
Yeah, I'm going along similar sort of lines. You're right. I think Steve Smith will come good at Lord's. I think he obviously underperformed as there is a very high standard that he's been setting in the last year or two in Cardiff. I think he'll come good and score a few runs, and similar sort of turnaround, if you like. I think Ian Bell might score a few as well. And we know how well he performed in the Ashes a couple of years ago. A little bit of criticism about him before the last Test. Got a few runs. I think he might be one to watch as well. But yeah, very interesting to see what does happen in the game. It's quite interesting to see that prior to the series, Australia were odds-on favourites to win the series. Now England are favourites, so it really has turned on its head. But we'll finish by making our predictions. It's just what's going to happen, Rob?
Well, I think after such a dominating performance from England in the first Test, in previous Ashes series, that it's very difficult to sort of stop that momentum once it goes against you. So I actually think England, with their recent record at Lord's, are favourites for this game, and I do think that they have a very good chance of winning. If they do win, I think they're very, very difficult for Australia to get back. But I'm going for an England win this week.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's ever been done. Well, it might have been done once or twice, coming from 2-0 down to win a 5-match test series. I'm actually going to go for a draw. I think I might have predicted that in Cardiff as well. I think I just get a feeling that whoever's going to bat first is going to score a lot of runs, and then England or Australia batting second will also score a lot of runs. So, and then they'll just sort of run out of time at the end. But I think it'll be a really keen contest. And so I'm going to go with the draw for what it's worth. So there we are. That's our little look back at Cardiff, our preview of Lords. Plenty more interesting content around the Ashes on Cricket World to look out for. Brett Lee, we're talking to a lot of other players over the next few days as well, so do keep an eye out for that. But Rob, thank you very much for your time once again here on Cricket World TV Hotspot.
Thanks, John.
And thank you very much for watching us here on Cricket World TV. Bye for now.